Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fat.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Blue Hawk. Last night we talked about permission to speak and how we really are like cattle. The masters have it dead on when they describe us as cattle because cattle need permission to move, they need permission to walk, they need permission to eat. But the truth of the matter is, you and I, somewhere way down deep inside, are men and women. We're human beings. Even the 98% of the human race that truly is cattle and have a very low IQ. And that's just the way things are. It's nice that our fathers and mothers 200 years ago said that all men were created equal. That's just not true. And the more you and I, hopefully the thinking 2% of the population, waste our times trying to get people who really are cattle to think for themselves, we're wasting our times, we're wasting our life. Our fathers and mothers 200 years ago wanted everyone to be treated equal under the law. That's fair. That's only reasonable. That's just. But to spend time and money and effort trying to get cattle to think, I'm not 200 years old. I'll be 53 next month. I've pretty much been doing this for 40 years. And I know from first-hand experience, you can't get cattle to think. In fact, if you try to get cattle to think, they'll become quite hostile. So don't bother. But the permission to speak thing, I've seen with my own eyes too many times. And like I did in our chat last night, I give you my permission to speak for what little value that has. Maybe what you should do, and this is just a thought, you should turn to your friends and your family and to the people you work with, the people at the grocery store you get your vegetables from, and say, I give you permission to speak. What do you think? That's basically what permission to speak means. It means, what do you think? And that gets us back to my favorite saying of all time. I listen to what you say, I watch what you do. And that personally is a mantra of mine that I try to remember every time I leave my little room here in Europe. And if I'm doing business with someone, and if I'm asking a girl out for a date, which hasn't happened in a long time. But it really gets down to, I listen to what you say, I watch what you do. And it's amazing when you say that statement how fast you can clear a room. It really is. Except for the people who actually are people. Permission to speak just means, what do you think? I give you permission to tell me what you think. I give you permission to tell everybody what you think. Because in the end, it comes down to you. Not we, not they, not somebody else. It comes down to you. It's your decision. It was my decision to flee the United States. I just couldn't deal with the horror. It was my decision to flee New Zealand, where I discovered even more horror. It was my decision to flee Prague, because there was even more horror. And I think, I hope, I pray that I'm finally amongst people who are actually real. I hope, but it was my decision. I can say that for 6 years I was lured to New Zealand by a massive international advertising campaign. But it was my decision to go. And it was my decision to try for 3 years to try to make their lies workable for me. My decision. And those people, those high-end foreign professionals who stayed in New Zealand, they could leave, but they'd have to give up everything in their lives that they value, just like I did, to be able to get out of New Zealand. Again, my decision. I basically fled New Zealand with pretty much 2 suitcases and my soul. And I guess that's a bargain. And so tonight I thought we would chat about limitations of the human mind. And that's actually kind of a misnomer, because the truth of the matter is we don't have any limitations, but we're told we do. And this is reinforced by, of course, the chemicals that we're fed, told that they're actually good for us: saccharin, aspartame, artificial flavoring, artificial fillers, artificial coloring, all of which our bodies see as horrifying poisons. And if you eat at McDonald's long enough, as I did, you gain 100 pounds, and you're still starving to death, because basically McDonald's food is artificial flavorings, which are awesome, and plastic. Your body can't digest plastic, so it just hangs on to it like death while you keep eating more plastic, which I did for quite a long time. Again, my decision. It just tasted really good, and it didn't cost much, and it was very convenient. And the more poisons I ate, the more my mind was drugged. And not just heroin, not just cocaine or drugs, but artificial flavorings, artificial filler, saccharin, aspartame. They're all drugs too. And they also, as drugs, they poison your mind. We've all unfortunately had, at some point in our lives, dealings with drug addicts or drunks. And you can see the very obvious effects of heavy drinking and heavy drug use. I lived for a while with a girl who was a cocaine addict. And the few times I saw her not on cocaine, she was the sweetest little thing you could imagine. But that was only like 2 days out of months and months and months. So the effects of cocaine and heroin and PCP and whatever else you're on. In New Zealand, they have something they make locally called P, which I'm guessing is some sort of form of speed. Because when I was there, whole neighborhoods were people being murdered wholesale on drug deals that had gone bad, and I'm guessing that's some sort of upper of some kind. But the foods we eat at the major grocery stores, the fast food chains, are all filled with the same kind of hallucinogens. That's the word I'm looking for. When you eat artificial flavoring, artificial coloring, artificial sweeteners, artificial fillers, you poison your body. And when you poison your body, your mind suffers from hallucinations. And I know this from firsthand experience, because when I started eating organic food, my body began to cleanse itself when I stopped adding more poisons to it. The body will relax and let go of the poisons it's holding on to, trying to keep you alive. And I went through 9 what I call cleansings, where amazing things were ejected from my body. And I looked at these things and I thought, oh my God, that was inside of me? That has no place being inside of a human body. And that happened to me 9 times. But limitations of the human mind, we have no limitations, but we're told we do. We're told we're stupid by our politicians, by our corporations, and that they have to control us because they're smarter than we are. Well, if they're smarter than we are, how come we're at wars with people who we don't even know? Well, that's easy, because the corporations and our masters want to make money and they want power. If they're smarter than we are, how come the United States is, I think, $14 trillion in debt? People, millions and millions of people, are out of work. 58%, I believe, of the American population is out of work right now. So if there's 300 million Americans and 58% of them are out of work, how is that a good thing? And further than that, how is it that, what is that? Let's say half of the American population, because I'm no good at math. So that's 150 million people who don't have a job. How is that possible that we haven't stood up together as one people and said enough, and gone to Wall Street, arrested the bankers, which under the Constitution of the United States we have the right as citizens to do. We have the right to put them on trial. We have the right to get our money back from them because the bankers stole our money. It's real simple. The corporations stole our money. The politicians stole our money. The money didn't move to Mars. It didn't go to Alpha Centauri. It's right here. It's just not in circulation because a very, 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 very small group of people have it all. All we have to do is get it back. And if 150 million Americans are without a job and you all got guns, it's time you, as a person, look at the concept of the limitations of the human mind and say, no, I don't have limitations. It might help, it did in my case, it might help to stop eating poisons, start eating organic foods. Because hopefully, like it happened with me, it would happen with you. Every time I stopped eating chemicals instead of real food, I stopped hallucinating. And I began to see the world the way it really was. I remember one particular instance. I was living in a little guest house I had rented from a really hateful old woman in South Pasadena, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles, in what we call the Valley. When you hear of Los Angeles, you think of a city along the coast filled with smog, and there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that someday. But right above what we call the basin, what you would think of as Los Angeles, is a valley, separated by a low level of hills. And we call that the valley. In the valley is Pasadena, South Pasadena. And I lived there for a time when I was working at Caltech for NASA under a Raytheon contract. And I remember standing in my little living room looking out the window during this time of the 9 detoxes. And it was quite astonishing to me. It was like a curtain of green goo, transparent curtain of green goo, just sort of oozed its way up like a curtain at the theater going up. And I could see the world much more clearly. I thought, that's interesting. After that, the next cleansing. I'm driving in my little Toyota pickup truck, which I miss rather desperately. I'm not big into cars, having been an auto mechanic as a child. But I really, really, really do miss my little Toyota SR5 extended V6 pickup truck. I miss that, and I miss my cats. The only thing I miss of the States. That's not true. Here in Europe, I've discovered that food is really important besides the obvious. I really missed, all of a sudden I was missing French fries and hamburgers and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and apple pie and fudge brownies. Something I never thought of, in fleeing the United States. I really want to go into the food business. I really, but that's another story. But I was driving again from South Pasadena to the local drugstore. I needed something. I can't remember what, tweezers or something, not that interesting. Now, South Pasadena is a very, very, very wealthy part of Los Angeles. I, of course, was not wealthy. I was just renting a guest house from this really nasty old woman. And my little Toyota pickup truck was parked in my little parking space behind the house that went into the alley. So I got in my truck and I drove out of the alley, turned onto the main street there, Huntington Drive. And I was aiming from downtown Pasadena to the drugstore. And as I'm pulling out of the alley onto the main street, again, the same effect, the curtain going up of green, transparent, icky goo. This time, I was so shocked. I was getting used to the detoxing effects of my body releasing the poisons that I had eaten in the form of artificial foods and colorings and flavorings, and my mind no longer having hallucinations. Now, this is a really expensive part of Los Angeles, very expensive, but as I was pulling out of the alleyway onto the main street, Huntington Drive, and this icky, ugly, filthy green curtain of slime raised like the curtain at the theater, I was absolutely astonished that I lived in such a filthy, dirty place. And this is a very rich neighborhood. But I was absolutely stunned that I thought this was ever posh. Streets were filthy and unkept. As I got into Pasadena, the main city of Pasadena, I was astonished at how rude and stupid and thoughtless people were. I was trying to pull into the parking lot of this drugstore, and 3 cars were blocking the street because a woman sitting in her car decided, instead of pulling into the parking lot to let the rest of us in, she decided for whatever reason to pretty much just stop her car in the entryway and talk to somebody. She was completely oblivious to the world around her. Completely. When she finally ended her conversation, we managed to pull out of the street because we in turn were blocking traffic on this very big boulevard in Pasadena. Managed to find a parking space, walked into the drugstore, finally found a clerk because I couldn't find whatever it was I was looking for. And of course, they're treated so badly they don't really care, and I don't hold that against them. And I was talking to the clerk, asking her where I could find whatever it was I was looking for. Another woman walked up, actually stepped between me and the clerk, and started talking to her as if I didn't exist. And then walked away, completely oblivious to the world around her. Which gets us back to limitations of the human mind. If you poison your body, as I discovered, with artificial flavorings, artificial filler, artificial coloring, it makes your body sick. Then you have to go to the doctor, who will give you more artificial chemicals to try to keep you alive, but doesn't actually cure you, because you can't cure poisoning if you keep poisoning yourself. And you poison yourself every time you eat something that Mother Nature didn't make. Limitations of the human mind. We deliberately limit ourselves because we poison our own bodies, which in turn gives us hallucinations. Not as dramatic and obvious and deliberate as drinking does, or cocaine or heroin does. It's more insidious because it's long term. I once knew a girl, very pretty, very sweet girl, in Los Angeles. Her mother discovered that she had tried marijuana or something stupid. Her mother was horrified, took her to the family doctor. The family doctor convinced the mother that her daughter, who was 19, 20, 21, was vengeance from God, because the mother had partied as a kid. She had lived in New York. She had partied a lot, had a lot of sex, really enjoyed her life. Her doctor, the family doctor, convinced the mother that the daughter was a punishment from God. This poor girl, the daughter, all of a sudden was on what they like in the States to do to people is a cocktail of all kinds of drugs. I think she was on 7 different types of drugs. This poor girl, 19, 20, 21, from that point forward didn't know where she was. The limitations on her mind, of the human mind, were so gone. She would actually just wander around the streets. She didn't even know where she was. They would often find her at the local coffee shop just standing in the coffee shop for hours, unmoving, because she didn't know where she was, because she'd been drugged literally out of her mind by a cocktail of 7 or more drugs, all of which were hallucinogens, that the family doctor had convinced her mother she needed because, in the doctor's words, this was a punishment from God for the mother's wild lifestyle as a kid. To get somebody off a cocktail of 7 plus hardcore medically approved drugs takes years, because you just can't stop them. Because the moment you do, your body goes into shock. And that's where you hear about stories of mothers drowning their 4 children, mothers hacking their children to pieces, because somebody had put these poor women on these cocktails of drugs and then stopped them. That's like your car being hit by a train. There's really no discussion. You're gone. Of course, the problem is once that poor woman who's now in prison for something she didn't do because she was literally in a different world because of the drugs her doctor had put her on. This poor woman, once she does detox, is going to live the rest of her life knowing she hacked her children to pieces. Unfortunately, these are real stories. You can look these up on the web. You don't need me for that. But limitations of the human mind. It's really easy. It starts with the simplest thing in the world. Stop eating poison. Stop poisoning your body. Stop giving yourself hallucinations. It's really simple. No artificial foods, no artificial fillers, no artificial coloring, no artificial sweeteners, and no fluoride in the water. You know what fluoride is? Fluoride 100 years ago, our grandparents used as rat poison. During World War II, the Nazis put fluoride in the water. They discovered that it made the prisoners easy to handle. It tranquilized the prisoners in the death camps. So when they were being walked to the showers, they didn't really care. So, no artificial foods, coloring, fillers, sweeteners, no fluoride. You can look all of this up on the web. Look it up on the internet. But it's up to you. It's your decision. Do you want to be cattle being marched to the showers to be gassed to death? It really is up to you. That's what this amounts to. Limitations of the human mind. I'll tell you a secret. Once you get the poisons out of your body, once your brain is no longer having hallucinations from the drugs that you get from eating the food at the grocery store or the fast food store, you can actually see the world the way it really is. You can actually talk to people and you can actually hear what they say. You can actually make your own decisions based on reality, not the fantasy that your corporations or your presidents or your senators or your congressmen, who now have us in a $14 trillion debt, while 58% of 300 million Americans are out of work. It's up to you. It's your decision. It always has been. There is no we, there is no they. There is I. I want to make my life better. I want to deal with reality. I want to save my family. I want to save my city. I want to save my country. I want to do this. I'm not going to sit around for someone to save me. I'm going to save myself. I. And if you have friends or colleagues or somebody who wants to walk along the road with you, great. No one's going to carry your luggage as you walk down this road. You've got to carry your own. Might be a good time to leave some of the luggage behind. That's what I learned. But it really is up to you. Limitations of the human mind. There aren't any. And you discover that when you stop poisoning your body. Because it sounds trite, but you really are what you eat. You really are. Just a thought. A very old race, a very good people, gone now, destroyed. And our masters have tried to eliminate our history. The last 2.5 billion years of our time here, you and me. But these very good, very intelligent people, who apparently trusted too much, and too much faith in their enemies, destroyed them. But they left us the Brehon laws. I don't pronounce that well. It's Brehon, if you can even find them anymore. But they had a wish, a greeting, a farewell, a prayer for their friends or for a beloved stranger. And I share it with you. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, I'm Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel finding his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.